Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Thank you so much for joining us today. And today's session will be the Founder's Guide to the Techstars application virtual event. My name is Corina Hierro, and I'm a Global Startup Scout here at Techstars. I will be moderating today's session. So if you are joining us here in Zoom, go ahead and leave your comments in the Q&A section or the Q&A box below, and our speakers will be answering those towards the end of the event. We usually allocate 25 to 30 minutes, so the second half of the event, to answer those. And if you are joining us via LinkedIn, please leave us your questions in the comment section, and our colleague Jessica will relay those over to our Zoom. Keep in mind that we do get a lot of questions every single session that we host and that we live stream, so apologies if we don't get through absolutely all of them. But that is why on Zoom we do have the upvoting option, so you can upvote the questions that you are more interested in knowing. So that's how we're gonna answer the questions based on popularity too. All right, so let's get into it. Founders, a lot of you are curious about the application process here at Techstars, and today we're going to be chatting about navigating that process. Whether you're a first-time founder or you're a seasoned entrepreneur, we are going to provide you here today with a detailed explanation of what the application process looks like here at Techstars, the world's most active pre-seed investor. So we're going to cover key aspects of the application, common pitfalls to avoid during the process, and just an overall demystifying of the application journey. Our awesome speakers today are Sylvia Bouloutas, Investment Associate of the Techstars San Francisco Accelerator, and Steve Bernard, Investment Associate of Techstars Boston Accelerators. Thank you so much for joining us, and go ahead and take it away.
Fantastic. Okay, great. So hopefully you guys can all see my screen. So here on the chat, please say hello, put a website of what you're building, tell us where you're based, write your name, ask any questions using that Q&A button. So we'll get to them at the end if that works for everybody. So yeah, let's see where are people calling in from. Steve, you want to read out some of the locations?
Yep, we got Lagos, Hawaii, my favorite place in the world, Idaho, Santa Monica, London,
Amazing.
UK, Toronto, Boston.
Wow.
Shout out Boston, Montreal, Chicago, South Africa.
Wow. Yeah. And everybody put your website, put what you're building in the comments. Feel free to connect with one another. It's always great to meet other founders and learn from each other. We can kind of kick into, I guess, what our backgrounds are. So as Corina mentioned, I'm Sylvia. I'm the investment associate out here in San Francisco in the Bay Area. We run 2 accelerator programs a year. They are a little bit more focused on AI, deep tech, frontier tech, et cetera. But at the end of the day, we are very generalist. So we look at all types of, products and services across industries. So whether it's healthcare, cybersecurity, whatever you're building, we'll take a look at it if it has an AI component. And that's a little bit about Techstars San Francisco. I've been with Techstars for a couple of years now, and before I was actually a venture capital investor and also a founder. So have a lot of empathy. Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Bernard. I'm the investment associate at the Techstars Boston program. And at Techstars Boston, like the San Francisco program, we're technically generalists, but definitely focus a little bit more of, on what we have in our backyard in terms of resources, mentors, and venture dollars. So it's a lot of health tech, low-grade biotech. We also do a lot of, climate tech, built environment, sustainability, and then also, future of work. So whether that's something with an AI component, big data, cybersecurity, DevOps tools, all that good stuff, we love. So super generalist on the whole. And my background, I was also a venture investor, did growth stage investing prior to this. And then prior to that, I was at a multifamily office doing the venture investing there. So whole background on me.
Great. Corina?
Hello, everyone. Like I mentioned, my name is Corina Hierro, and I'm a Global Startup Scout here at Techstars. Previously, I worked as one of the very first hires at an HR tech startup, and we went through the workforce development program back in 2021.
Awesome. Great. All right, let's kick it away. So Steve, if you want to kind of introduce the section around how to, choose the right accelerator program. So
For sure. So first of all, thesis. Like Sylvia and I just kind of mentioned, each one, while a lot of them are generalists, have their own kind of thesis, and we try and take advantage of what's in our backyards, in terms of resources, mentors, venture dollars. So while, some of the programs, especially the city programs, are technically generalists, certain ones have certain preferences. If you're going to New York, fintech makes sense. If you're going to Boston, health tech, biotech makes sense. So we try and play into that and make sure that you're going to the right place to get the most out of the program. So there's also the partner programs where they have special different thesis, whether it's, health tech, biotech, fintech, insert vertical. So make sure you're looking at which one makes the most sense for your company. Stage also makes sense. So if you're too early or too late, which we'll kind of go into later, I know as part of the frequently asked questions, it doesn't necessarily make sense for the given accelerator, and we want to make sure you're getting the most out of it. So if you're ready to go to market, typically we like to have, an MVP and something to quote unquote accelerate, with a little traction and proof of concept there. But the stage definitely does make sense, but we're pre-seed to seed, very generalist. So there's definitely a wide range of, stages of where you're at, given your company, but also your industry, makes a lot of difference there. Location is obviously important. I'm a big advocate of going to a different location than your home city. You already probably have a lot of that network. I think it's super beneficial to go to another city, start building more connections, especially if you're located in one of the hub cities. However, if it makes sense, given your vertical thesis, absolutely stay where you are. But I think there's a lot of value to be gained by going to another city. Team, obviously important. Pick who you want to work with, right? And if you really have a great connection with the team, you're going to get more out of it. And so understanding the team, their strengths, and background as well is super important in figuring out the program. So obviously talk to as many different people. Sylvia and I, while we have the same role, totally different backgrounds, totally different skill sets. And so you should make sure, that you're picking your team, and who you work best with and what makes most sense for you. And then also past portfolio companies, again, kind of goes with the thesis or what that ecosystem has to offer. But if we have past portfolio companies in similar verticals, we probably can introduce you to more people, whether that be investors, potential users, clients, customers. The more familiar your program is with the vertical, the more they can help, and the more they can help make those connections.
awesome. Yeah. One thing, to add is a lot of this information should be available online. So if you say you want to do Techstars San Francisco, Techstars Boston, Techstars New York, that should be on a lot of the pages, right, around kind of the thesis, like what they're looking for, whether the program is in person or hybrid or fully remote. Also, we do run a fully remote accelerator called Techstars Anywhere, which is a great option if you feel more feel like that would be a better fit for you for whatever reason. The team profiles are on there. Sometimes we have portfolio companies listed on there too. But additionally, like Steve said, really, it's great to even ask a program team like, hey, I'm building in cyber. Have you guys ever invested in it before? How familiar are you? How's your network? For an example. So definitely important things to consider as you're kind of trying to choose the right program.
Also, one last point to that, we
Yeah.
are also Techstars is one company. I know there's definitely different differences between the different programs, but like we're all working together. So if one program, you come to me and it doesn't make sense for our program, but it's like, hey, we have a great program and it makes sense for you to be in San Francisco or New York or, a vertical specific one, we'll help make that connection and introduce you to the right team. So it's not a vote against you if, we're like, hey, I think this one makes more sense. It's really, we're one Techstars and we want you to be where you can get the most value.
Absolutely. So for this section here, we're just going to sort of walk you through what the application looks like. So once you pick a program that you're interested in, or even just generally on the Techstars website, right, you can click a button around apply now, and we're just going to walk you kind of through what the sign up process would look like so you can get comfortable around the application, because a lot of founders, it seems really intimidating to apply, or they don't know how much, information they really need to kind of get started. So we can take a look together. So if you look here, the first section is kind of around your founder profile. So we really recommend, writing as much as possible, as specific as possible, and definitely, right, including your LinkedIn's, kind of your socials, your location, your title. And, we know a lot of folks are co-founders, but we really love to see like specific titles, within each company. Like whether that's CTO, COO, CBO, CEO, right? Like we want it to be sort of separate, just so we know you have different swim lanes. Great. All right, next. Steve, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, and this is kind of, similar to the last one, but it's just who you are. We want to get to know you. It's an early stage investment, and we'll talk about kind of how we decide later, but we really are betting on you. So we want to know who you are, your background, and as much as we can get to know about you. Of course, we can't unfortunately meet everyone, but a lot of it is who you are, do we believe in you and the team? And so as much information as you can give us here is important in just helping us get as much as we can to know you on paper, which never tells the full story. But yeah, I mean, this is just more of the founder profile here.
Yeah, definitely. So here's when you start to tell us a little bit about your company. So I love to click through websites. Ideally, I know a lot of you are very early, so it's okay if you leave that blank. But one thing to really kind of note here as you start to talk about your startup and start to kind of write more about it is that it doesn't all have to be perfect, right? Like the website doesn't have to be like the perfect version of the website in order to apply. I think as long as it's like, simple and to the point and communicated well, like we expect a lot of these kind of, especially links to things as like to be very early. That doesn't mean, we still want you to, show us your best work, but really it's like we'll consider everything very holistically in addition to like conversations with you, your background, your industry, this, that. So I would encourage you to put almost as much information as possible and not worry if like, oh, I won't include my website because it's not good enough yet. I would suggest against that. So here, high level, what year is your company founded? We just want to see how long you've been in business, and just how long you've been working on this particular problem. And here's a really important one. What problem are you looking to solve? So this is so important, where it's like make this specific and jargon free. That is critical. Like we need to be able to understand very quickly what you are looking to solve, and then specifically on the next one, what is your company going to make to solve this problem? Like these two are probably like one of the most important parts of the application section. Put in as much information, but make it concise in the sense that like at the end of, reading the problem and the solution statement, I should walk away with a pretty good understanding of like what you're building, why, and because that's what we see, kind of very early on in the application process. So it's very important to be really concise there. Then is your company incorporated? Yeah, please, please be honest and communicate it. It's okay if it's not, but we need to know just so that we can also throughout our process be able to help you the most. Let's see here. Steve, do you want to take this slide?
Yeah, for sure. So industries, again, that's kind of to the point where we all have, while generalist programs, certain focuses, areas of expertise given our city. So we want to know what industries you're in, and that can help us either redirect you to a different program that probably makes more sense, or it's, hey, this is right up our alley, we know. But super helpful just for us getting an idea of where you're playing. And also we're trying to figure out, where are you based? And if you're coming to the US, if you're from the US, what part? Does it make sense for you to come to this city? specifically, or is it easy? So we really just want to know a lot about you guys, again, as much as we can get on paper, which again never really tells the full story. And then what helps us with that, of course, is the product video. If you have one, totally okay. If you don't, there's also companies that you can't properly demo with a video. We get that. But as much as we can get helps us get a better idea of who you are, what you're doing, what you're building. Again, with the introduction videos, we want to know you as much as we can. So, please do spend some time on it. It's super important. We do watch them. And it's a great idea to do it because it helps us get a sense of who you are beyond your background or technical skills, just as a person and as a founder. So super important there. Again, team, super important to us. And we are betting on you guys more than your idea at this stage. And then obviously pitch deck gives us that, deeper look beyond the high level, like problem solution, but really, how are you solving it? What are you doing? How are you building it? What's the market look like? And it really just helps us do a little deeper dive beyond the high level. What are you doing? And helps us kind of decide what makes sense and really understand what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's really true. And I would also urge founders to really, although these aren't required, these three, the product, the team, and the pitch deck, these sections, I would really urge you to do them. Like, we will read it, we will click through it, we will like really kind of go through everything. We're very thorough, and I think it can only make you look better, and it can only make you look like you're taking the application more seriously. So even if it's just a short kind of product demo, even if it's like a very, kind of, the team introduction video doesn't have to be anything fancy, just, communicate your backgrounds and kind of your passions that brought you here. The pitch deck, again, it doesn't have to be professionally designed, but I think the more information you can give us, the better we can come to kind of those interviews as we start to conduct interviews after you apply, and be prepared to kind of really discuss your business. So my personal opinion is like more is always better. Just give it, because we can help you better like that.
Also, it shows effort. If you really care,
Yeah.
this is a throwaway application and we don't really care. We just linked our, website and our LinkedIn's and we didn't put any effort into it. Like those ones we typically we see that there's no effort and probably not a commitment to the program and therefore oftentimes not a fit. So again, you don't need to have all of this stuff. We know a lot of people won't have certain things, but the more effort you put in it, it's super clear to us.
Exactly. Okay, awesome. Moving on to the next section. So we're going to ask you more questions about your team. This is also very important. In addition to the video, we like to kind of see this paragraph. And, as Steve said, team's the most important thing as we look at as we look at companies, because you're just so early in your journey. That's what we really bet on, is kind of who you are and your passion behind it, your background, and kind of a why you, right? So this section is also very critical. Like, why is your team a winning team? So, a lot of times, we love to see kind of a great like combination of skills, like with kind of technical talent in addition to kind of maybe industry expertise, etc. So that's, really what we're looking for here, and be as kind of relevant and kind of, include all your kind of deep expertise, and also let us know who's full-time versus part-time. That is something we're going to be asking you several times kind of throughout our process, just so we can kind of gauge like how the team kind of is sort of laid out, and, who's really kind of fully committed to the business.
And I to add on to that, I think this is a really great section along with the founder video to showcase the parts of your team that don't read on your LinkedIn or resume, right? It's why is it us? Why do we have this passion? How do we find this problem? And why we should bet on you, why you're the one to build this solution versus, the competitor with a similar idea. And so I really think that's a super important section because a lot of people's skills are not showcased just in your past job titles and what we can see on your LinkedIn. So great opportunity to showcase those intangibles that don't read right off your LinkedIn, and tell us why you.
Exactly. So this section is startup progress. So this is also very important. And it's really critical to think that traction is not only revenue. There's a lot of different forms of traction. There's a lot of different ways that you can communicate to us that, you have sort of identified an early market that is interested in what you're building. So that could be waitlist customers, that could be letters of intent, design partners, any sort of marketing and sales results, or even just learnings, right? Or even just you've had these interviews and this is what you've learned, and that's totally okay. Again, do you have revenue? That's another question on here. Be honest and be clear, and don't feel like if you don't have revenue, you shouldn't apply. It's totally fine to not have revenue and apply. We invest in companies like that, every batch. We have companies that have not already, monetized, and that's all right. I think, as you go into the interviews, right, it's more just about preparing yourself to answer the question of how will you eventually get revenue? But at the stage that you're at, feel free to, not have revenue yet and be honest about that.
And also common mistake here for the revenue, it's month over month. It's not cumulative. A lot of people will add it up and, of July 23, here's how much we have to date for the year, or maybe in the lifetime of the company. It's month over month. So just a common mistake there on the applications.
Yeah. And then also at the bottom, right, have you received funding? Don't feel like you have to have received any funding to join Techstars. Like, you could say 0 and that's fine. And then we'll talk about how you plan to get funding. So, don't feel pressured to say yes and think that's going to make us want to, interview you more, proceed with your application. That is all part of a really large picture. So, we would prefer just honesty and direct transparency around, where you are in your startup business.
And that shows if you can bootstrap or you have other revenues coming in. Super strong sign of a scrappy founder. So you do not need funding, and it's not always a huge plus, especially if you gave away most of your company super early. But yeah, be honest there, and we do love bootstrap founders. We really do.
Awesome. Steve, do you want to take this section?
Yep. So your startup strategy, again, it's this is bringing together all the other pieces that you probably alluded to in the application above, but how are you monetizing? Sure, we just got your revenues, but okay, how? Are there multiple streams of revenue, or, oftentimes it's early and it's sure this is maybe a consulting revenue, but, long-term we're pivoting to a SaaS solution, and, our revenue streams are going to look different. So we just kind of want to get an understanding of how this is breaking down, or how you plan to, actually eventually monetize on this. And part of that is your target audience. So again, where are you starting versus long-term play? Where do you want to be? Most people don't start selling to massive enterprises for your first customer. So where are you starting out, and how do you plan to get there? Again, just kind of part of your holistic strategy. Another really big part is your competitors, and it's always tough because you don't necessarily know the other stealth mode startups that might be working the space, but it's really, are there players in the space that we know of? How do we stack up, and how do we plan to differentiate ourselves or beat out an incumbent? It's always tough, but the competitor landscape is super, super important, especially if there's big competitors, but it's a differentiated solution where you think you'll beat out a Microsoft of the world because of the differentiation, because of the way you're positioned. But this is a great place to showcase that and tell us, why you think you're going to beat out a big incumbent or other competitors in the space, and why that is. Let's see. Right now, so the timing is interesting. A solution that was launched 5 years too early can fail. And oftentimes people do. The tech's not there. The market's not ready for it. So explain to us here, why that may be, and why it's perfect for right now. Especially a lot of this section talks about AI and data and proprietary data. It's a different space than it was 3 years ago, never mind 10 years ago. And so kind of tell us about right now why this is a good opportunity versus 5-10 years ago, or 5-10 years in the future. Why now is the perfect time, and how you're attacking the market. And then customer acquisition strategy, it lay it out for us here. It's kind of probably alluded to above. when you're talking about monetization or, just target audience and how you plan to capture them. But tell us a little bit more about how you plan to get them. Is it through social media marketing? Is it through just conferences and going to conferences and meeting people, industry partnerships? There's a bunch of different ways to acquire customers, but tell us how you're going after the target audience that you mentioned above, and why you think this is a good strategy given your position in the market.
Definitely. Also, to add on that, like, who are your competitors? What I see with every application cycle are companies that say, oh, we have no competitors. And I would really, really strongly suggest for you to not write that, just because there definitely are competitors. And that's okay. That actually just proves that, this is a huge problem, and that most markets are usually large enough to have, many, many competitive companies. And like, I think if there's a company that's a little further down the line, but is doing something very similar and they've done very well, that's actually great signaling for you and your business. So don't be afraid of saying, yeah, but be honest, like, write out the ones that, you feel like are competitive. It's more just an exercise around how aware you are of the market that you're working in, versus, us saying, oh, we need to back a company that has no competitors, so we must only screen for companies that say no competitors, because we automatically say, okay, that actually comes off as someone who hasn't done research on the market that they're working in.
There's an adjacent competitor somewhere.
Truly,
Always.
truly. Okay, so kind of finishing up this part, what are the next 5 to 10 years look like? And, this is really the grand vision. And I think a lot of companies here, what I've seen, a mistake that they make is they go kind of almost like a very granular grand vision, like, oh, we want to make this much revenue next year and this much the one after. But what I'm thinking is, how are you going to really disrupt the industry that you're working in, right? Whether if it's healthcare, what's the big disruption point? And you can dream, you can think really big. You can say, okay, my dream is to build an entirely new hospital system. And that's actually what we want to hear. We want to hear that you're thinking large and big, and that this is going to be $1 billion company, and that you're going to completely take over a space. We don't need it as granular. I mean, it's fine to include more detail, but I would highly suggest to, kind of, this section is fun, right? To be a dreamer and really tell us what kind of the vision is going to be in 10 years. How big can this get?
This is my favorite part. And to Sylvia's point, I always tell my founders, say the thing that you have been told not to tell in a VC pitch, that wild vision that you're this is really what I think, but it sounds too dreamer. We want to hear that. And then also, and you can kind of break it down in milestones, but we want to see what is the grand thing that you're going for here beyond, your small, what might be just a feature at this point, and where you're going with it.
Yeah. And then kind of the last section, how'd you hear about Techstars? You can really kind of specify if there's a founder that you've already talked to who went through Techstars. I think that's always holds a lot of weight, or someone from the Techstars team. But again, if you don't know anyone at Techstars, or you don't have any specific point of contact, that's okay too. Just tell us that this is, you just heard about it through a webinar, or read about it, etc., and that you're interested in applying. All right. So here is the program selection part. So we always get so many questions on this part, so it's good to kind of outline it here easily. Oops, sorry. Let me go back. Okay, so program selection. Here you can click this button to explore all of our programs. We have 40 plus accelerator programs around the world, in a lot of different cities. And like we mentioned before, they have different theses, they have different structures. Some of them are hybrid, remote, in person. All are going to be 13-week programs, but they're all going to have their kind of own unique flair, perspective, thesis around how they build programs. So you are able to choose 2 program preferences. There's a primary preference and there's an alternate preference. Your primary preference is really important to be very thoughtful around. And that, we get a lot of founders who sort of just throw in a primary preference because they like New York, or they want to live in San Francisco, or they like Miami. But the company's actually not a really good fit for the thesis of that program. So we really suggest you taking a lot of time to kind of research your primary program. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but also kind of reach out to the kind of core people in the primary program that you want to like apply for. So for instance, if you want to do San Francisco as your primary, or if you're really interested in SF, I would highly suggest you reaching out to me or to our team and kind of asking if we felt like you would be a fit for our program. And and we're very honest, and sometimes we'll say, actually, there's another Techstars program that might be a better fit for you because of their thesis, because of X, Y, and Z. So really be very particular, I think, around selecting a primary. It just can help you 10 times more. Steve, I don't know if there's anything you want to add here.
I think what I'll add, which you touched on, but I just want to reemphasize, is that your primary is important and alternate. Make sure you're thinking through that, but also selecting neither does not help you. Some people are like, oh, I didn't take a primary, so now I can be considered for all programs. It is the case that you still, either way, you're considered for all programs, but we want to know, hey, Sylvia, I really want to be a part of the San Francisco program for a reason, and be able to speak to that in the interview. It just means you've done your research. It means you've identified, for whatever strategic reasons, this makes sense. And so there's a lot of weight on your primary and alternate, but selecting none of them does not necessarily help you. And it definitely does not open up a wider stream, which I think people sometimes are, misled to thinking or think is the case.
Yeah, that's perfect. So it's kind of the following step, right? The program selection step. So we can go through that. And now let's talk about a little bit of what happens after you apply. So we walk through kind of step by step how you're going to submit that application and what happens next. So we review all applications. Every single application we review. And I know it seems like a lot, but like if we will read everything you write, and it's what we're really passionate about is helping startup founders succeed. So, we will from then we'll select a batch to schedule interviews with, right? And those interviews are, really important around, it's kind of your first it could be your first touch point with the program team, right? And it's a little bit more around, why are you the right founders to build this company? Like, what are you specifically building? We want you to be very concise. Some monetization plans, grand vision, as we talked about, and specifically why Techstars. And that's really important to us because it means that you've done your research, what Techstars can support you with, and then you come prepared because, and we alluded to this earlier, I mean, we want to work with teams that really want to work with us and that have put a lot of effort into, researching the network, the benefits, like the community that Techstars offers. So it's high level, and we try and let each applicant know our decision around 8 weeks, but those timelines can shift via program. Steve, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say here.
I would just say your point about why Techstars and how we can help, and what may be specific to the program is super important to us. Oftentimes we'll get the answer, we want to put your logo on our pitch deck to raise and give us validation, or we want money, which obviously we invest, but that's not a good reason. We're value add, and it is an accelerator program. We're not a traditional VC by any means. So if we don't think we can actually add that value and help you, it probably doesn't make sense. And so to be able to really think through that is super important, and saying, hey, I need mentors in this space, or I really love the network, and there's just a million reasons why, but to say money, or I want the validation of the Techstars stamp of approval, typically not a good answer, and not a reason to do the program, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, so we touched upon this a little bit before. So what are we looking for? This is so easy for us because it's like the team mainly. We love founders that are passionate about what they're building, that have a really unique insight into the problem they're solving, whether they were a patient, whether they were a customer, whether they worked in this industry. Like they have a really they have a tie to the problem that they're solving, and that they're really scrappy, they have a lot of grit, and they're really ready to work hard. So those are the core of what we're looking for. I mean, we also like to invest in large and growing markets. We do take into account, whatever progress you've made and how close you are to really getting product market fit. And of course, we are excited about the ideas that we invest in, but at the same time, we realize that companies, ideas, all this stuff, there's so many pivots that happen, not only at Techstars, but even a year, 2 years after Techstars, right? That that's why we bet on the core team the most. So
Yeah, to that point, I don't
yeah.
think that slide even emphasizes enough how much team it is. It could be the top 10, it's team. It really is like, we know it's changing, it's gonna pivot, the market's gonna change, like everything is going to change. And like, we're betting on you that you're an expert in, the area for one reason or another. You've lived the pain point, but it's really, do we think you have what it takes to be nimble, to pivot, to be coachable, to make the relationships you need to be able to, sell or get people on your team, like all of those kind of intangibles that are tough to put onto paper. Like, that's what these interviews are about, is getting to know you guys at the end of the day.
Exactly. So here we are going to jump into some FAQs that we've prepared, but also, like we said in the beginning, make sure to put any questions you have in that Q&A section at the bottom. So hopefully you guys are all able to access that, and we'll try and cover some kind of commonly asked questions. So here's one: do you accept solo founders? So we get this all the time. So yes, we do accept solo founders, but we really are trying to see that, and these will be questions that you'll get throughout our process, like, can you really show significant progress as a solo founder? And that there are a lot of challenges associated with this, right? Like, if you're fundraising, who's building product? And if you're building product, who's kind of navigating sales? Like, it's very difficult, I think, to do it all. I have invested in solo founders. We have invested in solo founders, and they have done very well, but they had a harder time. And I think Techstars, in addition to kind of all the work that you have as a founder, can be a lot. So while we do accept solo founders, a big part of joining Techstars and what we do is also trying to make introductions for other founders in our community who they might want to kind of partner up, like if they're looking for a CTO, they're looking for another kind of folks, trying to see who we can introduce them to kind of build the team a little bit bigger, just to kind of relieve some of the pressure off their backs, that just because it can be very difficult. But at the same time, like, we will invest in solo founders, so don't feel like that's a disqualifying factor.
I agree. And also to that point, we're going to definitely ask you about it, because it's inherently harder, and to be the expert in every field there are is just impossible. So we're going to push and say, who are your thought partners? If you're, not sure on something, where do you go? Where do you get help? Who's running this when you're doing, this part of the business, like Sylvia said. So it's always harder. But it doesn't mean it's impossible, and we bet on solo founders all the time, but we're going to push to make sure you've thought about it. You have either the resources in place to help you as a solo founder, or at least know what you need in terms of help and who you need to be your next hire, a mentor, advisor, so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. So next, what about idea stage founders? So we also get this question a lot. So it's definitely possible. I think, we feel like if you're in an idea stage, though, you might not get all that you need out of the Techstars program. Like, the Techstars program is really designed, as Steve said earlier, to kind of have an MVP, something we can accelerate you with. And if it's really an idea, we can give you workshops, we can introduce you to folks, but you won't really, like, at the end of the 13 weeks, it might just not be enough time, for you to like have really been able to really absorb all the resources that we have and make the most out of it. So we usually recommend, like, if you are an idea stage founder, it's fine to get in touch, it's fine to apply, but really come to those interviews prepared on like how you're going to achieve really fast growth.
Also here, I do encourage applying early when you are maybe idea phase or maybe just beyond. We track your growth from one to the next, and we'll chat with you and say, and we are very honest, and people don't always love that, where it's, hey, you're a little early now. Here's where we need you to be, given your industry in traction or MVP development. Just because you won't get as much out of the program if you're too early. And like Sylvia said, if we don't have something to accelerate, for lack of a better word, we can't help that much, and you're going to be heads down R&D, or you just don't get as much out of the program, and we won't entice a founder into doing it if we don't think we can help, or sometimes kicking the can 6 months down the road, and when you're really ready to go, you'll get way more out of it. So highly encourage people to get in touch early. Let's start the conversation. But do not be offended if we're like, hey, I think next program is going to be better for you. It's only to your benefit, and we do monitor your progress from one to the next. We have all your old accelerators applications on file, so we definitely do look at it, and it's not one data point, but it's a linear line in your progression. So definitely apply early, get in touch with us, but it is a journey.
Yeah, exactly. Very true. So do you accept international founders? So yes, we definitely do. We take a look at kind of founders from all over. I mean, the first thing to think about is there a Techstars program closer to your location that you would enjoy more? So definitely take a look at that. But if, especially for San Francisco, we get founders applied from all over the world, and we take a look at kind of everybody. So for our program, especially, we have kind of a mainly like hybrid program. So there are parts that, founders will need to be in person for. So really the main question would be, can they relocate? But like I said, some programs are remote, some programs are hybrid, some programs are fully in person. That's going to be all in the specific program website. So that's, you're going to have to take a deeper look at that. But of course, we'll take a look at international founders. Okay, so this is the question we get a lot, and this is kind of why we touched upon this a little earlier. So can founders work a full-time job while participating in the accelerator program? So this is a difficult, one, in the sense that being a CEO of a startup is full-time, and a lot of the responses I get are like, yeah, I have a full-time job, but I am also CEO of a company like 40 hours a week. So isn't that full-time? But it is a little bit more than that. Like being a CEO of a startup is not 40 hours a week. It's a lot more. And I think a lot of you guys know this, and we've seen it in program. I mean, I think we found it, very difficult for founders to have a full-time job and also be part of the accelerator program. So kind of we expect that founders who do join our accelerator are working full-time on their startup and are no longer kind of employed with a full-time job. And that, will come with, right, like additional sacrifices and, potential challenges. And that's, a really important kind of personal decision for you to kind of think about around, if that's feasible for you. And, unfortunately, it is kind of it is hard though for a lot of founders to, be able to kind of give up their full-time job and kind of go straight 100% into being a startup founder. But for what we seen, it is really what is required, not only of us, but of like the market. Like if you go to raise venture capital funding, like they'll need you to be full-time as well. So we're really kind of just setting you up for that. Okay, Steve, do you want to take the final one?
Yes. Can I meet with the Techstars team? Absolutely. We are always holding office hours. Ask me anything, events like this, which we are getting to your questions, I promise. But we really do encourage you to reach out, chat with us. I like to think we're very friendly. We don't bite, but please do reach out. Let's chat. Especially even if you're early, like let's chat about your idea and where you need to be to get the most out of Techstars. Also, just because you meet with us doesn't guarantee you acceptance. But let's start the conversation. Definitely do reach out to us because, again, at the end of the day, your application does not say everything, and we want to get to know you. So please do reach out and follow us on socials because you'll see there's plenty of opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and here's our information. So as Steve said, we love hosting office hours. It's a super fun part of what we do, and we get to meet founders before they even apply. My office hours will personally start in September, so But, feel free to reach out to me. This is my email. Steve's email is right there. Send us a note, even just a hello. We try and get back to every single founder that reaches out to us. And like I said, starting in September, I'll be able to host office hours and talk a little bit more about San Francisco, our program, and kind of like what the selection process will look like for our next cohort. So that is just our information here. We'll leave this up. So do you want to start getting to the Q&A? Corina, what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys so much for that information. Founders, definitely take advantage of the fact that you have Sylvia's and Steve's email right here. Reach out directly, join their office hours. I also host office hours every single week, and I can send the Techstars events calendar here shortly in the chat. And the first question that I'll start off with, Sylvia, is regarding the Techstars San Francisco application.
Yeah.
Founders asking, when can we expect to hear back?
Yeah, so our application process has been very long, and we're so grateful for everyone's patience. It took much longer this time with some other internal kind of processes we had to go through. So we will be letting all San Francisco founders know by the end of next week about whether or not they are accepted into our program.
Awesome, awesome. Let's see, another question. This one is from LinkedIn. How can you afford to travel in the early stages? Let's say you are working, you're self-funded, and you're on a minimal budget.
Yeah, so I think that it's, you don't have to ideally have that much travel. So when you get into Techstars, you get there's a little bit of investment that comes with that. So that can kind of help out with some travel expenses that you have. But it is important to be mindful of like what conferences you need to go to, what can you do locally, and how you can really kind of connect with your local ecosystem. And if you get into our program, that's something we can really help with.
Also, thank you to, I guess, COVID a couple years ago. A great product of an awful event was that it's a very virtual world now. So you don't necessarily have to travel to get meetings with someone in a different part of the country, a different part of the world. So really take advantage of the fact that we can just set up a Zoom meeting, and then be very mindful of what expenses you do incur when you can. Runway is important. So while a conference might be great, make sure you're spending it on the best conference, the best trip. Say you go out to San Francisco to meet some of Sylvia's investor friends. Make sure you get everyone in one trip so you don't have to make multiple trips, and just be very mindful of the capital, if you do spend, that you're getting the absolute most out of it, especially at these early stages.
Awesome. Another question. What would be the main difference in virtual and in-person accelerator programs? I can speak just from experience. Our program, Workforce Development, was a hybrid, and this might vary by managing director, or different programs have different preferences. Our program was hybrid, and they only wanted us in person the very first week of program and the very last week of program for demo day and things. And we did have a meetup where we went to a little cabin trip, but this does vary by program. I don't know if you guys want to also mention some of the programs and what those formats might look like.
Yeah, and again, like it totally depends on the program, right? But I think a hybrid can sometimes do like the first week and the last week in person, like the first week being an orientation week, the last week being like a demo day, right? And some programs that are hybrid have 3 or 4 in-person weeks. So what that would look like would still be the first and last week, but then maybe in the middle program, like 2 in-person weeks to do, some sort of conferences or team building, or kind of host some events kind of for the founders. So it really kind of depends on the program, but that's a great question to ask, the program team of, whatever program you're interested in attending, is like, what would this format look like? What are the required in-person weeks, etc.
Yeah, and all of them are different. So for us, we typically do the first 2 weeks, sometimes a week in the middle of program, and then the last week and a half. But it really depends. I highly encourage anyone to be there in person as much as possible. We understand everyone has families, lives, businesses to run in different places that are probably not your, hub city and accelerator city, but be there as much as you can, especially if it's a different city, because you're really, a huge value of Techstars is the network. Get to know your team, get to know your co-founders, and get to know people in that city. That's really the benefit, and a large part is the network. So be there in person, show up. I can't stress that enough. Obviously, we know you can't always be there 100% of the time, but the more you're there, I think you really do get a lot out of it, especially learning from your peers in your cohort.
Yeah, it's really a valuable experience to also, maximize those in-person interactions. Founders might be coming across similar pain points, so you can always chat with them, keep each other accountable. It's absolutely great. Next question. This is from Shivani. Should we include our advisors in the team section?
So I would say you can include them, but just be very clear that they're your advisors and they're not, full-time team members by any means.
Yeah, definitely include them in your pitch deck as well. We love to see who you're working with, people you get advice from, but just make it clear. Like Sylvia said before, especially if you're full-time and you have a part-time person, or maybe they're a consultant or contractor, just give us as much context and detail on who's on your team, but we want to know everyone you're working with and that's on your team. Just make it clear to us on the application.
And this is one that I've seen before in other events. How do you feel about startup founders being brother and sister? I've also seen startup founders ask, what about the co-founders being husband and wife? How do you guys see that?
I think it's great. Like, we've invested in husband-wife teams. I invested in two sisters a couple of years ago. We invested in a different kind of family. Like, we had a lot of different kind of father-daughter, etc. So I think it's great. I mean, I think if you can kind of be able to overcome any challenges that could be associated with that and make sure that they're like, things are getting done. I mean, we don't hold any sort of like, we don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I love it, especially because they know each other better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's a co-founder relationship. So we evaluate it the same as two people that are not related or, siblings or, married. It's, can you guys get along? And that's a big part of getting to know you guys. Like, how do you work together? If we're in an interview and you keep cutting the other one off and they're clearly upset, like, a little bit of a red flag. It seems like you're going to have some issues. So I really don't think the relationship, like in terms of who you are to each other, matters, but how you guys interact, how you get along. It can be more difficult the more entwined your lives are, but I think it's super, super positive. But it's just how you guys can get along, and everyone does that different in family environments. So
Definitely. This one is a very interesting one. Does my startup have to offer a product? I have gotten input that investors are far less likely to be interested in my business if it's service-based. Is there any truth to this?
I think like when you're looking for venture capital money, and that's a specific type of funding, there are a lot of different other fundings out there, right? But if you're looking for like venture scale to build a venture scale company, I think it has to have those really high growth margins and that kind of like hockey stick trajectory that we look for in companies. And that's because we have a specific return profile as a kind of investment in the kind of more venture capital investment space. But if you are not interested in venture capital, there's a lot of different like funding options out there, and it's not just venture. So not every business is the right fit. And I mean, I would still suggest applying. I think if you're interested in building a product eventually that kind of can kind of build on top of the service that you already have kind of built, then I think there's a tech angle there. But if you don't want to, have any sort of tech angle or are not looking to build anything kind of more of that high growth, like a thesis around that, then I would say maybe, reach out to the right teams, right? But maybe it would, maybe different forms of funding would be better. Steve, I don't know if you have any opinions there.
definitely. I love what you said about not every company is venture scalable.
Yeah.
Some of the best companies are just, smaller businesses or be a huge business, but it's not, a VC investable, and that doesn't mean it's a bad business. it's a certain type of business that gets venture dollars. Again, to Sylvia's point, because of our return and risk profile, it just has to be a certain nature, a certain kind of investment. So one, just know that, understand that. And it's not a vote against you or your company, but it just might not make sense for us. And then also to Sylvia's other point, is a lot of the best companies start out services, consulting, and you might be using your own tech and you're getting money in the door and maybe it's not necessarily scalable or repeatable, but you're not diluting, you're keeping lights on, you can pay and hire people. It's awesome. But to kind of then transition that into a scalable, venture scalable kind of company is a little different. So if you start out that way, I think it just means that, you have something and it's just about your way of framing the execution and transition into more of a venture scalable model versus a services or consulting based business. But I think that would be my take. I love when people start out with consulting revenues, honestly.
Great. I believe we have time for one more question. How important is a pitch deck? Can a one-pager be enough instead? What do you say? So can you guys also expand on just the art of storytelling?
I love pitch decks, and I think they're really important for a lot of different reasons. I think it's a great way to kind of frame the problem, the solution, right? Your product, to kind of show us what you're building. I think it's actually a really good exercise. And like Corina just said, it's an art of storytelling, and that's a critical piece of being a founder, is being able to really tell the story of you, of the business, and of where you're going. And I really do enjoy kind of the more traditional pitch deck format, right? Around, like I said, the problem, the solution, the team, the market, kind of diving into the product and the features, and unit economics. I like all of this because I think the more information you can kind of give, the better off it is. And I think one pagers are not used as commonly, to be honest. So there are some investors that will ask for a one pager, but most investors, even moving past Techstars, as you go into traditional kind of VC fundraising, they're going to look for a pitch deck. So I would think it's a good kind of muscle to start, building as you're kind of in the earlier stages.
I agree. And I also think pitch deck is the most critical part in telling the story, especially when you're not there to voice it over, but give us the visuals. Let us see, the products, the features, how you're building the tech. You just get to say so much more with a pitch deck versus, if we're not having a live conversation. And also, I think there's kind of a misconception that, we're kind of too early for a pitch deck. I don't really ever think that's the case. Tell your story. Even if you don't have, a product, tell us the idea, tell us the background, tell us about the market, tell us why it's interesting. And so I think if you're not giving us a pitch deck, it just, to me, seems like a lack of effort, because there's always something to tell in terms of your story at any point. And it's a really good way to illustrate it without actually, speaking over it live.
Great. Sylvia and Steve, thank you so much for this insightful session. I want to say thank you for speaking on all these different topics, answering questions, helping out founders. I want to say just really quickly, we do host a digital event almost every single week. I did send the Techstars events page on the chat if you want to join us. We talk about the application process. We have pitch series coming up. We have a fundraising series that happens also every year. So these are very, very valuable to founders. So you're more than welcome to join in and enjoy and get a lot of insights from our industry experts. Also, if there are any other questions that did not get answered during this session, go ahead and email us at startups@techstars.com. And you can also engage with the Techstars startup community on Reddit. So look for us on there. Steve and Sylvia, thank you all so much one more time. Founders, I hope to see you on the next one.
Bye, thank you.